Hello, my name is Celia. Today I'll be talking about how certain components factor into the admissibility of social media evidence in court. So let's get started. This is the agenda for today. I'm going to be giving you an introduction, some background, some literature highlights, my methodology, my hypotheses, my results, my shortfalls, and future research ideas. This research will cover the admissibility of social media evidence in the Canadian Court of Law, how social media evidence impact court cases, and propose a framework for social media extraction. Now, why study the topic? There are no recent studies on Canadian law surrounding social media data, and not all social media evidence submitted into court is deemed admissible. To help aid investigators and law enforcement with handling social media, and the findings will offer a standard for social media data extraction. The background about the topic is that social media is popular and almost everyone is using at least one social media network. Because of that, an enormous amount of data can be found through social media extraction. And so law enforcement and forensic investigators are using social media platforms to find information. Social media data is used to aid in criminal and civil investigations, many cases in which social media evidence was crucial. However, there is currently no standard for social media data extraction. Moving on to some literature highlights, there are 4 topics I'll be covering. So social media forensics, tools, frameworks, and issues. Starting with social media forensics. So the emergence of social media forensics changes the way digital forensic professionals examine evidence. The traditional approach to obtaining evidence is not feasible for social media because social media data is volatile. Moving on to tools, forensic analysts can choose any tool to extract data from social media interfaces because there is no standard. However, most tools are not suitable for social media platforms, but whichever tool the forensic analyst chooses to use, they must be able to justify that in court. On to frameworks. There is no consistent model or guideline that forensic investigators follow for social media. Current frameworks are outdated, aren't relevant, lack data integrity, and preservation. However, there are many proposed components and frameworks found in previous literature, such as this one. This one is a multi-layer semantic framework. There's 4 layers, as you can see. There's an acquisition layer, a knowledge layer, an interface layer, and an analysis layer. So these are more frameworks from previous literature. So on the left, you can see that this one starts from the investigation preparation to response and then to digital evidence securement and collection. On the right there, you see there's 2 environments. So they have the preliminary and evaluation in the physical environment and then investigation and analysis in the digital environment. The main challenge with social media evidence is ensuring that the evidence submitted to court is consistent and reliable because social media data is volatile. So that means users can add or remove content, and once something is deleted, it can only be recovered by the social media site. Another issue with social media data is that it can be manipulated or falsified, and social media evidence is not self-authenticating, so you must have information to authenticate them, such as metadata or timestamps. My methodology is split into 3 categories: collection of data, proposed framework, and framework testing. Before I start, let me address my hypotheses. So my first null hypothesis is that social media data will impact the outcome of a court case. My alternate hypothesis for that is social media will not impact the outcome of a court case. My second null hypothesis is that forensic tools are required to ensure data obtained from social media is admissible in court. And my alternate hypothesis for that is forensic tools are not required to ensure data obtained from social media is admissible in court. My third null hypothesis is that data integrity is a factor in determining the admissibility of social media data as evidence. And my alternate hypothesis for that is data integrity is not a factor in determining the admissibility of social media data as evidence. Starting off with the collection of data, I collected Canadian court cases from the Canadian Legal Information Institute, also known as CAMLE. I used search terms such as Facebook, voir dire, admissibility, and authenticate. There's 3 types of documents that I downloaded: voir dires, reasons for judgment, and reasons for sentencing. All the court cases were then loaded into atlas.ti, which is a qualitative data analysis tool. And then it was further coded by year, type of document, type of evidence, whether or not the evidence was accepted, law surrounding the admissibility, and any problems with the social media evidence, and then any available verdicts of the case. Moving on to my proposed framework. The proposed framework was built from previous literature, and then I added any significant data found from atlas.ti. With the framework testing, I created bogus Facebook accounts to form a testing environment. And then I used 3 tools to test that framework. So Usage Cloud Analyzer is my only forensic tool used in the study. And then I also used Octoparse and Hunchly, which are 2 open source tools available online. On to my results. With the court cases, I had a total of 51 cases. 26 out of 31 cases with verdicts depended on the social media evidence. So it's an 83.8% indication that social media evidence impacted the case. If you remember my first null hypothesis, which was social media data will impact the outcome of court case, this fails to reject that hypothesis. So this indicates that the inadmissibility of social media evidence would affect the outcome of a court case. I also found that the Canada Evidence Act was frequently used in court, and it was actually the threshold in admitting social media evidence, which had to be met by a balance of probability. So sections 31.1 to 31.7 summarizes that the authentication of evidence must be proved to be submitted, and proof that the device used to record and store the evidence is working properly or a presumption that it is. Also, according to the Canada Evidence Act, there is a presumption of integrity when submitting electronic evidence. That integrity indicates ensuring that the evidence is what it is purported to be. And if you remember my third null hypothesis, which is that integrity is a factor in determining the admissibility of social media data as evidence, this also fails to reject that. Key components found from previous literature. So these are the top 5 components I found most important. The ability to reproduce identical results, to ensure that the data can be authenticated, the ability to filter irrelevant data, the ability to make notes, and the ability to create a report of the findings. Key concepts and components found in court cases. So the most important components I found from the court cases was actually to do your due diligence if there are no tools. So that includes production or preservation orders and MLATs. So obtaining production orders will provide more information about where the posts originate from, and a preservation order will help preserve the data found from the social media site. And then MLAT actually stands for Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, and it's an agreement between 2 or more countries for the purpose of gathering or exchanging information. Combining all of those components, this is the proposed framework. So this framework covers when the investigator gets a hold of a social media account and needs to extract information from it. So you first start off with the discovery of the social media account, and you want to see if you have credentials. If you don't have credentials, you want to try to obtain it. And if you aren't able to, then you want to look at what's publicly available online. So with the public available information, are you able to find anything relevant? If not, then that's the end of your process. Rolling back a few steps, if you're able to log into the social media account, log in, and then you want to do a timeline newsfeed analysis, which includes browsing, searching, and filtering. If you're able to find anything relevant, then you want to capture the data. So inside capturing data, you want to select the tool. But you want to select a tool that's able to collect all of the relevant data and make any necessary notes. Besides selecting a good tool, you want to be able to obtain a preservation or a production order, as well as requesting an MLAT if the records are outside of Canada. Throughout the entire steps, you want to make sure that you're recording and making notes of each step that you're taking. And then after all that is completed, you want to create a report of your findings. So there are 4 steps to this social media extraction process: identification, search and filtering, capture and preserving, and then reporting. With the framework testing, Usage Cloud Analyzer was able to pass the framework for authentication, analysis, data capturing, and report generating. Octoparse, however, didn't meet all the requirements of the framework, so it failed. Hunchly was also able to pass the framework for authentication, analysis, data capturing, and report generating. If you remember my second hypothesis, which is forensic tools are required to ensure data obtained from social media is admissible in court, this rejects that hypothesis. So the second alternate hypothesis, which was forensic tools are not required to ensure social media data is admissible in court, is accepted. Some of the shortfalls to the study was that it focused on Facebook, so I had a very limited amount of court cases available. There was also an issue of the tools, where it wasn't feasible to test more tools in time constraint, as well as not being able to access certain forensic tools on the market. Future research could expand outside of Canada and find a universal standard for all digital forensic professionals to cover other social media platforms and additional testing of the framework with other tools. And that was the end of my presentation. Thanks for listening.